What if the most powerful medicine wasn't a prescription, but your voice? Today's guest, Dr. Fred Moss, also known as the Undoctored, spent over 30 years in conventional psychiatry and then walked away. Why? Because he saw that what his patients really needed wasn't more medication, it was connection, self expression, authentic healing. Now, a transformational coach, best-selling author, and sought-after speaker, Dr. Fred helps people around the world reclaim their voice and rewrite their story, starting from within. In this episode, we'll explore how emotional exhaustion, chronic stress, hormone imbalance, and mental burnout are often rooted in a loss of authenticity, and how radical self-expression can be the catalyst for healing. So if you've ever felt dismissed by the system, labeled instead of heard, or stuck in survival mode, this conversation will meet you there and offer you a way out. Because the truth is, you are the author of your life, and the story is still being written. But before we dive into this episode, you already know what time it is. Vibe with me, y'all. Welcome to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. Y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. It's your healthy habits and lifestyle coach, Jovonnie, and this is the safe space where survival mode ends and your healing journey begins. So if you've been pushing through pain, fatigue, bloating, or hormone chaos, I want you to know that your body isn't broken, it's speaking. Welcome to the Good Vibe Studio, Dr. Fred Moss.
Jovonnie, so great to be with you. I can't wait to carry on this conversation. What a great introduction. Wonderful. What's happening?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So the undoctor himself is here because of your radical shift away from conventional psychiatry. What did you see or stop seeing that made you just change your path altogether, Dr. Fred?
So the radical shift is only on the back end of a life that was really dissatisfied with the way things are going. You know, I went into psychiatry after I had dropped out of college for the second time. And if we really want to take this back, we can see that I've been enchanted with the whole idea of communication and connection since I was a little baby. And that's what I'm finding is almost everybody is really enchanted with that since they're a baby. That's what we really want when we're children. That's what we really want when we're young adults. That's what we really want when we're adults. That's what we want when we get old. What we really want is we want to be connected to. That's more than anything. That is the number one medicine on the face of the planet. There is nothing that rivals that. There's no Seroquel, no Prozac, no CBT, no EMDR. There's no therapy. There's no group therapy. There's nothing that rivals the whole experience of being connected with another person. And we already know that. That's how we fall in love. We fall in love by being connected with another person. When I was a child, I was born into a family that had two brothers, 14 and 10 years old when I was born. They're still around. They're 14 and 10 years older than me now. And they already have told me a number of times that, I arrived to bring joy and peace and unity to a family in chaos and disarray and conflict. That was my job. So when I arrived on the planet, I punched my card and I was ready to go. And that was my job description early on. And I was a bundle of joy. And I was a precocious little child because I had these two brothers who were teaching me everything about what's going on in the world. And by the time I went to school, that's what I really wanted to do, was learn how to communicate. I had seen my family communicate. And I thought someday when I get to be a big boy, I'm going to be able to communicate too. So I started elementary school. I was like smart, I knew a lot of things because my brothers had taught me, and I could read and I could write, and I, knew a little bit about sex and drugs and rock and roll because that's what my brothers taught me, And by the time I was in kindergarten, even in kindergarten, I was like, who are these kids? They just wanted to deal with blocks and naps, and that's it, and throwing blocks and had taken naps. I'm like, I want to do that too, but I got other things to carry on, and I want to learn how to communicate. But I quickly learned that, school wasn't going to be the place that I learned how to communicate. After all, the teachers, they would want to sit me down, quiet me down, and make sure that I do exactly what they say instead of what I think I should do. So I was shut down. I was smothered, and I was surprised and a little bit disappointed. But I figured, well, these kids, my brothers and the old kids, they must have learned how to communicate somewhere. So maybe it happened later in school, like junior high or something. So I started junior high, I'll learn it here. And you know what? It just got worse in junior high. It was like they just sat me down even harder, you know. Look, I like to talk, and I was talking as a child. There's no elementary school teacher who forgot having Fred as a student. I'm pretty sure about that. And I was kind of always a pain in the neck. But in junior high, it was like, you know, I still could be a pain in the neck, but not while I was in class, you know, when I was outside of class. So I started leaving class pretty early. I decided, you know what, this class thing doesn't work for me. I want to learn how to communicate. And in high school, I did a lot of skipping of school. I did, you know, kind of made it through and did whatever kids did back in the 70s. I did a lot of that. And, you know, I just learned that communication wasn't going to happen in school. But I had one last chance, and that was maybe I'll go to college. You know, maybe college will teach me how to communicate. That's what I figured, you know, what am I supposed to think, right? So 40 miles to the west, and because they had some very cool helmets, very cool football helmets, and I just loved them, there was the University of Michigan. And I went to the University of Michigan at that point. And you know what? It wasn't any better in the University of Michigan, not in the school anyway. In the school, I was still being told, I was still being talked over by a bunch of people who were teaching me things I didn't care about. And the only place I really learned how to communicate was in the streets. And that's really what I had learned all the way around, is that, you know, you get with people who aren't like contained by the school system. And this is where I can communicate, not necessarily in the hood, by the way, but definitely in the hood. I wasn't afraid to go to the hood. My mom would say stuff like, don't ride your bike past 8 Mile Road. I'd be like, yeah, Mom. And that day, that may she rest in peace, but for sure that day I'd be going to 7 and 6 Mile for sure, man. That's what I did, because that's where the action was. If I wasn't supposed to be there, that's where I went, and I would just learn that was where communication always took place. So in Ann Arbor, I learned how to communicate, but in the streets of Ann Arbor, not in the University of Michigan. And I eventually I dropped out of school. And I got on a Greyhound bus and I went all the way across the country to Berkeley, California, where I could learn how to really what was up with my life. I took all my stuff with me and I parked it in Berkeley. I was there for a summer. I had like, you know, a pretty good summer, but it wasn't sustainable. And my family then called me and they told me that they had heard about a new industry that I might be really good at. They thought that I had the aptitude. I was at, you know, kind of a math geek. And so the name of the industry was called computers. So maybe you've heard of that industry before. You know, that was this idea that that computers was a place where I could do my best business. And so, you know, I decided I would go back to school and learn how to do computers. So back to Ann Arbor I went. Do you hear me all well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because you're frozen. Your picture's frozen, but I'm glad you're here. So I went back to the University of Michigan at that point, and you know, it was the only computer in all of Michigan. It was like a 2-acre facility of it called the computer. And, you know, we spent the whole day like punching cards and batch jobs and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do that either. So I dropped out again. And I was like, you know, that's it. I'm not going back to conventional education ever again because it's just useless. And my mom was cool with that. She said, yeah, it's okay. You don't have to go back, but you got to get a job. And I was like, Mom, you know, moms, they want me to work. So I'm like, they got me an application in Pontiac, Michigan this time, at a state hospital for adolescent boys, a state mental health facility for adolescent boys. And that was January of 1980. I thought I would only stay for about 3 weeks until orientation was over. And then I'd have enough paycheck to go buy myself a car and drive around the country and figure out what my life was about. You know, that's what I really wanted to do. But on the 4th week, I was convinced to go up to the floors by my friend Paul, who later became a very close friend. He was in orientation with me. He's like, come on, Fred, you got to try it out. I'm like, okay, but I was terrified. I was literally terrified. These kids are going to beat me up. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not strong enough. I'm not big enough. I'm not bad enough. But sure enough, I was strong enough, big enough, and bad enough. And before too long, I actually got to like going to work. You know, it was fun to go to work because for the first time, what was I doing? I was communicating. That was the whole point. I was connecting to these kids and they weren't even, I didn't see them as kids and I didn't see them as mental patients. I just saw them as people. And this really worked for everybody. You know, work for me, work for them, work for the community. I got very good at being a childcare worker without, you know, in not so much time. And I love being with those kids and communicating. But the thing I didn't like about that job was psychiatry, of all things. I was like, man, psychiatry's headed in the wrong direction. And I could see that psychiatry was headed in the wrong direction. And, you know, like I decided, well, my brother was already a psychiatrist, the one 14 years older than me. And I knew there was a pathway to do that. But of course, it meant one more thing, which back to school. I got to go back to school for a third time. I'm like, oh, let's go. Let's make this happen. I can hold my breath for 9 years and see how this goes. And so that's pretty much what I did. I went back to school in downtown Detroit and finished off my undergraduate degree at Wayne State University, and then applied at a bunch of universities and got accepted at Northwestern University in downtown Chicago, which is totally cool. I'm down with Chicago. I love Chicago. I arrived in 1984, in the same year that Michael Jordan arrived, and I had season tickets for the Bulls all the way through med school. All the way through med school. I went to 16 games a year, watching Jordan from his early career for the next 4 years. That was like heaven for me. That was my break. That was what I was doing. You know, basically, you could say I was a med student with season tickets for the Bulls. Really, I was a season ticket holder for the Bulls who happened to be a med student. It was like, I just love going to the Bulls. And I knew I was seeing the best player of all time, and long before everybody else was seeing the best player of all time. It was really, really fun. And, you know, by the time I got out of medical school, I still wanted to be a psychiatrist. So I did a residency and did a fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry. And by the time I was released, Prozac had been introduced to the world. And most people don't understand how serious Prozac was. Most people don't get the impact that Prozac made on the world. See, prior to Prozac, if you were uncomfortable, people just, you know, kind of gave you mercy. Like it was okay to be uncomfortable. But after Prozac, if you were uncomfortable, that meant there was something wrong with you, that you had a biological condition, you had a chemical imbalance. There was something wrong with you if you were sad, if you were scared, if you were anxious, if you were depressed, if you were, distracted, if you were awkward, if you were hopeless or aimless or helpless, if you were any of those things, that meant there was something wrong with you all of a sudden. You know, we don't blame a log for burning in a fire, right? It's not the log. The log is not a bad log because it burns in the fire. And, you know, Krishnamurti, you know, he said some very cool things. He once said, it is no sign of mental health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And he was right. He's right. You know, like that's how we started measuring mental health, is like, if you could hang with the nonsense that's going on in the world, you're good. There's nothing wrong with you. It's like, dude, this is way too much nonsense to ask me to hang with. So if I'm depressed, or if I'm scared, or I'm anxious, or I'm nervous, or I'm feeling awkward, or I'm feeling distracted, or my thoughts are going everywhere, or I'm having trouble sleeping, or I'm having trouble taking care of my personal health, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me. It doesn't. In fact, it's probably the right answer to the system that's being served to us. We're living in wild times. And look, humans have always been living in wild times. It's not that much wilder than it's been for all time. I mean, you don't tell Adam and Eve that they weren't living in a wild time. They were living in wild times. And it's been wild all the way from there to now. So, you know, we start looking at, well, it's okay to be depressed. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be scared or anxious. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. But once I got released, all of a sudden, psychiatry had really become typecast field. And over the next 30 plus years, what psychiatry has become, and it wasn't that when I chose to go in it, but it has really become, is there's only two things that they really want from a psychiatrist, and that's diagnosing and medicating people. That's what I'm supposed to do. From somewhere from the top of some totem pole, because I spent all these years in school, I'm supposed to know how to do that and be an authority to be able to tell people what's wrong with them.
So when you were going to school to be a psychiatrist, what was your intention, Dr. Fred? What way
my
did you
intention was 100% to bring communication into the mental health field. I already knew I had my grip on exactly what the healing tool was that would work for any human being. And I wasn't going to let psychiatry get away without having that be the primary focus. So even if I had to be a vigilante, my idea was that I was going to come in and I was be a stand for communication and connection, just like everybody knows. I already knew that everybody knows this. Like I wouldn't have to teach people. I just have to tap them what they already know. I already knew when I was little Freddie that this is the deal. You know, when I was sitting in my playpen, I already knew that. And you know it. Everyone knows it. Everyone on this show who's listening already knows it too. If you want one thing more than anything, it's to be connected to another person, or at least have somebody get you, or someone you can get. Because that's when the magic happens. That's where love happens. That's where healing happens. And I just wanted that to be a primary component of future mental health. But as I got released, it became less and less so from a psychiatric standpoint that was an important piece of mental health. In fact, if you were caught up in that, it's like woo woo, like you're rejectable, you're like all of a sudden you're dismissible. And it's like, no, you don't have anything that rivals that level of healing. No matter what you're doing, I don't care what high tech you're doing. I don't care what studies you're citing. I don't care any of that. I don't care what the drugs say that they do. There's no comparison. There's just no comparison. It's a totally different league. And I can tell by your introduction and, me looking up a little bit about you that you actually know that to be true. I'm not saying anything that people don't know, which is what's really exciting about the stand that I'm taking. Ultimately, I'm only saying the thing that little Freddie knew and little Johnny knows over there and little Susie knows over there. And so does their mom, and so does their dad, and so does their grandpa, and so does their grandma. Everyone knows that what I'm saying is very profoundly true.
Let's take a minute to go there, Dr. Fred. You talked about moms, grandparents. You were working with adolescent boys at the beginning, and you felt that spark, that ignitement that happened when you got to start working with these boys. And it was probably due to the communication and the connection you were able to make for the first time, feel like a real transformation was happening. What should we be saying to the parents, to the grandparents, to the adults in the lives of these adolescent children who really just need effective communication and connection to help address these mental health issues and concerns that we have right now? I want to start here.
That's a great question. I love how you phrased it too. Look at there might not be mental health concerns or conditions. There might not. Might they really want to be is just connected with. All they don't. When you flip over on your kids and you start thinking there's something wrong with your kid, you've made a mistake. That's how I see it. You've made a mistake. There's nothing wrong with your kid. Your kid is responding like kids respond. Your kid is responding like he or she responds. That's all they're doing. This is a crazy world. There's no recipe. There's no like owner's manual. There's no template to follow. We don't even know what we're doing. None of us know what the hell we're doing at all. We're just doing what other people do, and we're acting like we do what they do, and therefore that we must be okay.
Well, this is all we know. This is how we were raised.
This is how we do it.
This
is how we do it. And then we get caught up.
What would be those, I guess, 2 or 3 things that you would suggest that they initiate or provide in regards to building communication and connection for their adolescents?
It is up to the parents to actually listen carefully to everything their child is saying with the words and the non-words that they're using and how they're walking through life. And just because they discuss the parents with some of their habits doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. Even if they're doing stupid stuff, even if they're doing stuff that's potentially dangerous, let's say drugs or alcohol or sex or, doing stuff that is potentially self-destructive. What they want more than anything and why they're reaching out for that is they want to be heard, for real. I promise. No question about it. I've worked in many different maximum security prisons. I've worked in every single modality that's available inside of the Western psychiatry over the last 36 years. And what I find inside of my prisoners or inmates, inside of the, the inpatients or the outpatients or the residential residents or anything, what people want more than anything, no matter where they are in the ladder of, growth and development, is to be connected with. When I can actually listen to somebody and they believe that I actually get them, kaboom happens right at that moment. There is no side effects. There's no need for authorization. You don't need a doctor's order. In fact, you don't even need an education. You don't need anything at all. You just need what you already have, which is your heart, your soul, your mind, and a willingness to be accepting and compassionate and forgiving to yourself and others. When you could, and I don't mean this to be like, talking from a high pulpit. I don't mean to be talking Jesus talk. I don't mean to be talking Buddha talk. I don't mean to be talking Adam and Eve talk. They're all embedded in that same thing, by the way. Everyone, all 3 of those and all the religions and the philosophies of the world already know this to be true. What people really want more than anything is to be connected with another human or to be part of a group. In fact, we want it so much that we are willing, this is so sad, we are willing to pretend to be somebody that we're not in order to protect the person that we are so we don't get thrown off the island. Why we don't want to lose our connections. If we've got a connection, even if it's faulty, even if it's false, even if it's like made up and artificial, if we have a connection, we don't want to lose it. And we're willing to do almost anything to stay in a group, even if we don't like the group. We're willing to say things that we don't mean. Let's take a second with that one. What? Us human, we're willing to say things that even we don't believe. Look at how absurd and ludicrous and preposterous that act is. You get a moment to say something and you actually say something that even you don't believe. That's how you wasted that moment. And you're doing that so you can protect the actual person that you are, so that you can stay in the group or the partnership that you're with, because you're so afraid not to be with people. But imagine if you were courageous enough to actually speak what's really true for you, and that the people who resonated with you then could actually get you. You see, because if you start saying stuff that you don't believe, nobody will ever know you. They will only know this person you're pretending to be to protect yourself. Henry David Thoreau, I'll quote him now. He said something like, the mass of men go through life in quiet desperation and then go to their graves with their songs still in them. Now, is there anything more tragic than that? That's what I want to know. Is there anything more tragic, getting through a whole life and having nobody ever know you? Like, because you've been talking crap.
Real you.
Yeah. Now, it's not easy. This is not easy. We were taught how to do this. You know where we were taught how to do this? In school. As a first grader, little Freddie learned how to sit his butt down instead of saying what was important to him. He learned that what was important to me wasn't important to her, wasn't important to Miss Monroe, my first grade teacher. She didn't care about that. She did. She loved me. My teachers all loved me, but I was a pain in the neck for them because I caused so much trouble.
So systematic conditioning is what it sounds like.
Exactly. And we all had it. We all learned how to stop being who we were so that we could follow directions, so that we could sit still. And when we did that,
also get validated, Dr. Fred, because for me, when you were talking about it, it made me think about, as a child, being a people pleaser. And like you said, like not being able to speak your truth. Because when I did speak my truth, then it was like a bad thing. Now I hurt your feelings, or now I'm getting in trouble. You open the space for me to be honest. I be honest, and now you're offended, or this is a bad thing, or I shouldn't have never thought that or did this. And I'm thinking about it, and it's like what you said. It happens at such a young age. We get that type of conditioning, and now we're not, in your words, courageous enough just to own our truth. And then we don't, and not knowing that when we're not owning our truth and we're having these wasted moments, we're not really showing up as our true self. So if y'all are still vibing with us on this conversation and you're still listening to me and Dr. Fred, put true self in the comments to let us know you're still with us. And thank you, Dr. Fred, for breaking that down. First, listen carefully and use their words. That's, people really want to be heard and listen to, not be so ready to respond and rebuttal or react to what they're saying. Just sit there and listen, and then use their words when you want to check in and paraphrase or make sure you understood what they're saying. 2, you said believe in others so you can build true connection. People want you to believe in them because they want to believe in themselves. And sometimes it allows them to be able to show up more courageously and as their true self when someone believes in them. And then you talked about having the heart to be accepting, compassionate, and forgiving. I think those are great first 3 steps in ways that we can show up for the adolescent youth that you might think are having mental health issues, but they just really want to be heard. They really want to feel belonged. They want to be believed in, and they want to be accepted with your compassion and your grace, not your judgment and pushback. So I'm really grateful that you were able to take that moment to kind of break that down. So you told me before that one of the greatest root causes of emotional and mental distress is blocked self-expression. Can you unpack that, especially in the context of women navigating chronic stress and hormonal imbalances, that mental stress is blocked self-expression?
Yeah, blocked self-expression is a real problem. The truth is that we are all extremely creative, every single one of us. If you're still walking the face of the earth, it has taken a lot of creativity to get through today, to get through this last minute. After all, you got to pick and choose which paintbrush to pick up just to just to make your next move. Like whatever that is, you got a million things you could be doing, but you have to make the next move. And that took creativity to get to that. Now, the way we try to communicate, the way that's all been whittled down, because we have this thing called, virtual connection, which counts on visual and auditory primarily, the way that we communicate is one of many ways. This idea of speaking, listening, processing, and then speaking back and listening and processing and all of that we do in exchange. It's very limited. It's a very limited form of communication. It gets a lot of the work done, but after all, you have to pick your words on the fly. You have to string them together like you're stringing together a sentence, like a string of beads. And then you got to put the beads on with an outfit. They call that a sentence. And then you put down the sentence or a paragraph, and now you got an idea. And all of this is happening without a rehearsal. You're just slapping paint onto the virtual, canvas. Now, this is one way to communicate without rehearsal, without, editing, like you just deliver. And we think we're really good at that. We hold people so tightly to what they say and what they listen to. Like if I say something right now, and let's say I say something outrageous, you'll remember it for like several weeks. You'll be like, he was great until he said that. And it was like, it's like, and that now I don't think he's so great. I love the guy until he said that. Now I think he's a complete jerk. It's so interesting that, all I have to do is like tumble over one word or one thought or one idea, and I could change the way you think of me in forever. Like I can do that. So can you, by the way.
Right.
In about a half a sentence, you could make me remember you for the rest of our lives. So you get that? Like in a half a sentence.
And you could have changed since then, but no, I only remember this version of you because you said this or did that, and it made me feel a certain way. So now I see you totally different. Yep, I got you, Dr. Fred.
All right. Okay. So when we start looking at creativity, and that's already a high form of creativity, we see that there are many other ways to communicate. So self-expression comes through art and music and dancing and singing and drama and cooking and writing and gardening and even photography and even cleaning when you're cleaning for, when you're like rearranging stuff. And what I found in my practice is that when people are creative, so many of their uncomfortable experiences actually fade away, even if they're creating sad music, even if they're creating disruptive music, or disruptive art, or if they're dancing, out of control. It's still their pain and their suffering tends to diminish significantly, if not entirely disappear. So what I learned is that we have multiple ways to communicate with each other, and we very much focus on this one with, sit still, like create words and sentences and paragraph and ideas and thoughts and feelings and deliver those through our voice, land it over there in that person's ears, and they're already preoccupied with all the crap they're going through in their life. And we expect them to actually interpret it exactly as we meant to say it. Like, what an insane concept that we think that's the best way to express ourselves. And there's so many great ways to express ourselves. So what we end up doing, back to school a little bit, we got a lot of X's on, I know I did, like a lot of red X's on my art. Like, or maybe I didn't say the right note when I was singing, or maybe I didn't move well enough when I was square dancing or something. I got some, I'm not artistic. I'm not creative.
Yes, sir. I feel you on that. When you said that, it made me think about when I didn't make a certain dance company after trying out. Right. And I got the red marks on my paper too. Everybody knew that red pen when it was time to X things out. Or even if you thought it was still good, but it wasn't what your teacher wanted your answer to be, or what they wanted you to produce, or the way it wanted you to, look or express, it made you feel like, oh, I'm wrong. So exactly. I think I knew exactly where you're coming from.
Exactly. And so then what ends up happening, like you called a couple things, you said, these women are young women who are young, all age, they have hormone imbalance, or what else? I forgot the second one was, you said. There
hormonal balance. Yeah. Hormonal balance, chronic stress.
Chronic stress. So look, chronic stress can be managed, but it takes creativity to do so. So here's what I'm saying. Let me ask you a question, Jovonnie. If you and I were if we were looking for 100 reasons to be depressed right now, how long would it take us? Like 4 minutes?
100, Dr. Fred?
100. Yeah.
I would probably need a little
100,
bit more
maybe
than
you need
4
like
minutes or
11 minutes.
100.
Maybe you need 11
Yeah,
minutes.
but
Because
once we
we
start
want to,
rolling, we'll be able to.
once you
Yeah.
started rolling, it would happen. It wouldn't take very long. It wouldn't take very long. And now, how about 10? How about 100 reasons to be anxious? Same thing.
Mm,
It's the same thing. How about 100 reasons to be afraid?
mm.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Yeah, you can definitely do that. So there's no shortage of reasons to be really highly uncomfortable and to feel totally stressed. For instance, my wife is from Ukraine. So I can get like in a second, I can get like overwhelmed with the Ukrainian situation. Or, Charlie Kirk. Like you can get so crazy overwhelmed with whatever happened over there. Get so crazy overwhelmed with politics, so crazy overwhelmed with racism, so crazy overwhelmed with sex trafficking, so crazy overwhelmed with climate change. You can get crazy overwhelmed and stressed with anything because shit's happening in the world. Lots of shit's happening every second. Lots of things. And some of them are not very pleasant. Some of them are intolerable, heinous, like barbaric, horrible.
Unhumane.
You can get really stressed about that. No, anytime you want. Anytime. Just pack that in and ask yourself about how hopeless and helpless you feel. So in this world of stress, there's things happening in the world that can produce significant stress in our world, our inner world, maybe right there in people's homes. Our capacity, you use two words, which made me think that you already had looked at this a few times, the difference between reacting and responding, like there's a different thing. They're different. Like responding, you actually take in what's happening and you produce an answer. You produce a volley. You produce an exchange. But reacting is what we're here to do. Like we get really tied up with this idea of reacting. That happened, I'm there. That happened, I'm there. That happened, I'm there. And then we do that. And that can lead to massive stress. So, but here's the thing about stress. Stress is real. I'm not saying that stress isn't real. It's very real and it totally tears into all of us. But stress management is very available using simple practices. And, you can get better at it, like significantly better at it, by using simple tools and practices and exercises that have stood the test of time. For instance, meditation. So powerful. Like actually sitting still and silent for 20 minutes a day. I don't know anything more important than that. I really don't. What about gratitude? Like actually waking up in the morning and coming up with 10 things that you actually love about your life and starting the day from that. And instead of the misery of waking up in a day when you don't even know why you're even here, which most of us understand that experience. Or what about like, Tai Chi or Qigong, like getting outside into nature or being creative or pampering ourselves or taking walks or being good with our pets or watching what we eat or drinking lots of water. Or what about spirituality? Or what about service? Like truly being there for other people for no other reason but to be there for another person. You do all those things, they're going to help the way you're managing this nonsense that's happening in your head and in your life. You have a capacity to modulate that. I'm not saying that it's not real. It's so damn real. It is. It's so real that it has to be dealt with. And we have some tools because the plate is full. The smorgasbord table, you want to pick great things happening in the world, you can find them. Like we want to come up with 100 great things going on in the world, it'll take us the same time that it did to come up with fear. To come up with anxiety. And so we have a choice on how to deal with the stress, even though it feels like it's happening to us and we don't have a choice but to be stressed out. It's not exactly true. But medications are not a way out of that stress, by the way.
It's not at all. And I'm glad that you said that, Dr. Fred. And I'm really appreciative of the way you broke down some of those ways that people can address that chronic stress. And I want y'all, if you're not taking notes, it's which I always strongly encourage you to do, because that's what the conversations are all about. They're empowering you to think about how you want to heal, how you want your journey to look like, how you want to get out of survival mode. And so I hope that you learn from the conversations and it spark enough curiosity to make you go dig a little deeper and figure out if this is something you want to adopt and adapt into your own life and see it work for you. And so some of those ways with meditation for 20 minutes, gratitude, nature walks, Tai Chi, Qigong, drinking more water, watching what you eat, and being of service. And I have so many students, and I'm so glad that you brought some of these experiences to the conversation. And I just want y'all right now, I encourage y'all, drop one of those ways that Dr. Fred mentioned that you want to do more of, because you already feel so much better when you do them. But some of my students love being of service. They love helping out. And you can already tell that that is something they enjoy doing. They might not even realize that that's helping them manage stress, because they already have different other stressors going on in their life, things that they can't handle. And like you said, it might even be in their actual home. But I love seeing them be of service and thinking of other people and finding ways to show up, because it makes them realize that the world still needs them. They're still here for a purpose, even if they don't know, like you said, exactly what it is. So I really appreciate that. So looking forward to seeing what y'all put in the comments in a way that you want to do a little bit more of these things to really help with chronic stress. So Dr. Fred, in your work, how does healing begin when someone starts to reframe their internal story and start reconnecting with their true voice?
Yeah, so we've talked on this is my second book. It's called Find Your True Voice. My first book was what we've been referring to here. That was called Creative 8: Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression. And the punchline of that book, you can still buy it if you want to, but the punchline of the book is that being of service is the trump card. In the end, if none of the other actions of creativity work, helping anybody do something, helping anyone do anything is an act that will make everybody warm up inside. And our negative thoughts of ourselves, our experience of life actually reduces, diminishes, or often entirely disappears in the face of us being at service for service sake. So I strongly suggest that. It's very powerful and really allows us to be of humanity. And, piggybacks nicely on this idea that what we really want is to connect. And so when we know we're helping somebody, we're actually being useful, Now, when you talk about true voice, what we're really talking about is, we don't have to learn where our true voice is. It's here. That's where it is. It's right here. It's right here inside of us. And we have built all these things over the top of it that now have obscured our capacity to reach for it when we need it. So that's how that whole process of pretending to be someone we're not in order to protect the person we are, or of actually saying things that even we don't believe, or of going through life in quiet desperation and going to our graves with our songs still in us. That's how it all gets generated. The crack in the cement gets larger and larger and larger, and no one goes back and actually repairs it. And then we're left with, we don't know what we're talking about, and we don't know how to heal, because now we're living a life that is incongruent with what we know is so. We're living a life of duplicity. We're living a life where we're not being who we know is our best self. How many of us can relate to that? I'm going to go so far as to say 100% of us can relate to that. We actually, none of us are living truly to our 100%. And, some of us are making strides in that direction. I know for me, when I started making strides by actually leaving the field of psychiatry and deciding that I'm going to do something entrepreneurial instead, do some coaching, do some podcasting, do some speaking, do some, writing and, things like that, create some courses. This has been a very important piece for me, and I've become much more at peace with myself, because when I'm living a life inside of a block where I'm not being who I am, who I know myself to be, tremendous soul sacrifice takes place there. Tremendous heartache takes place there. And what I really want to do is emphasize to people like, hey, I've already been, it's another thing that happens. Our mind plays this game. I've already been dishonest most of my life. Why should I? It's worked okay for up till now, or something like that. It's like, no, it hasn't. You don't even know what it's like to be honest. If you've been dishonest your whole life and you think this is working, you got another thing coming. This is not a life that's working. That's a lot of pain by you having to remember all the things you said to that person that you didn't say to that person, and what they might have said to them, and when did I say that, and did I say that to that person, or did I say this to that? There's so much labor involved in living a dishonest life. When you start speaking your truth, you don't have to remember crap. All of a sudden, you just are saying what's so for you, and it can be different than 5 minutes ago. It's no problem. Your truth is allowed to change, by the way. there's this new thing, I guess, with politicians. Like if you catch a politician saying something in 1991 that they didn't say last week, you accuse them of being wishy-washy. What? They're really allowed to change. New information has happened from 1991 until now. People are allowed to change minute by minute. You're allowed to change your mind on any topic anytime you want to. No problem. That's called humanity. It's all good. And that's what Welcome to Humanity is about. I am the founder of Welcome to Humanity. And, that's what we're really saying. And the object of, I think what you're speaking of is like, how does that whole process start? I know for me and for the clients that I walk through this, it starts when you start realizing, let's say you're in your inner circle and you start telling your loved ones something that you've never told them. You start saying, 5 years ago, I stole $20 from you. I'd like to pay you back. Or you start telling them that you love them. Or maybe you start telling them that you admire them. Or maybe you start telling them a secret of your own. Like you start being really honest all of a sudden. And then you get that deep pleasure because all of a sudden you are opening up your vulnerable side that is real. And the pleasure of real so outweighs the pleasure of anything you've made up along the way. And when you get a little taste of real, talk about addiction, you can get very addicted to being real. And when that happens, where you have now found a solution that if you're real, you get to have friends. If you get to have friends, you get to be in love. If you get to be in love, you get to actually work with other people. If you work with other people, you get to change the world. How freaking cool is that? And you start realizing there's an impact that comes with actually being real that far exceeds the impact of lying to keep yourself from getting in trouble or getting thrown off the island. So the addiction that happens when you finally are real with yourself in your inner circle, incrementally, like just small steps at a time. You don't need to go to the top of the mountaintops and tell everybody how much you hate your mother-in-law. That's not what I'm talking about. You can just be good with just saying a few things to your inner circle and realizing what it means to profoundly say something that's coming from your soul. Profoundly be with that, whether it's through art, music, dancing, all those things that come with the creative eight. Or in speaking and listening. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, what I'm counting on, what I see is, eyes light up. Like people, I want more of this. I want more of this. How can I get more in this? And what I have to tell people and what the undoctor is, you're not going to get it from inside the mental health institutions. That's not where it's coming. We're not even trained to teach you how to do that. You start doing that stuff, we're going to think there's something wrong with you. Like if you start just being unleashed and start speaking your true voice, people might think you have bipolar or something. Like all of a sudden you're showing a real self and you're supposed to be like everybody else. You're supposed to be whatever that means. I'm not even sure. We've never really defined normal. Isn't that interesting too, right? We've never defined normal. We don't know what normal is. And yet we walk around thinking we understand what abnormal is. How can we know what's not normal if we don't even have a universal definition of what normal is?
I like it. Universal definition is lacking for normality. My biggest thing that I really enjoyed that you shared just now, Dr. Fred, was the impact of being real and how it allows you to start getting addicted to being real and being able to utilize your real voice. And I thought that the story was going to shift some when you said you tell your loved ones or someone that you care about something that you never shared before. And I at first I was like, but does that backfire? You know what I mean? Because for people who've done that before and then they switch it or they make it seem like, here we go, something's not normal with you. Why would you think something like that? Or maybe they may not approve of what you said. Then you automatically get to know that that person might not just be your person or the people that you could really be your true self around. And now it's, do I waste another moment being around, using my voice, loving, caring, showing up around people who can't handle my realness, my true self, my authentic self? And that actually kind of goes back into what you talked about before in regards to like radical authenticity. Like for someone who feels like they've been performing for years, how do they really start peeling back the layers and speaking their truth again? And it starts by telling the truth, expressing your truth to people, and see how they hold it. That's what I'm gathering. Is that right, Dr. Fred?
I think that's right, but I think there's one thing to be discerning about when what you're saying. You know, there are these
Okay.
people who have not been like used to you speaking your truest voice. They're pretty programmed too.
There we go, boo. Because they're used to having this idea of who you are. And now
Really,
you're showing
they're
up
pretty
as
programmed. They're pretty programmed.
Mhm.
So if they're like, who the hell are you? I don't know. You must be changing. There must be something wrong. They're only taking the party line. You know, maybe they're only taking the party line. Their first response might not be welcoming your own so beautiful truth and authenticity. Maybe that isn't going to be their direct initial response. Can you give them mercy? Can you give them time to get, who cares what they think? Do you get that when you're pretending to be somebody who you're not, it doesn't even work? You're still going to be dismissed. You're still going to be disregarded. You're still going to be thrown off the island. You're just going to be thrown off the island for acting like somebody that you're not, but it's not going to work. And so you don't get better at being someone that you're not. And so when we start speaking our truth, the other person might not be ready, or might think that if they say something that's in support of this new you, that they're falling off of their perch and they're no longer being supported by their inauthenticity. And so, you know, we're all inauthentic. Okay. Can you get that? Like everyone you're talking to, they're just as inauthentic as you. All the time that you're like, you know, you seem pretty authentic. It seems like it's not your first rodeo, but in the same time, there's parts of you that are inauthentic. They just are. You stay inauthentic. You still got your image to carry out. You still got your talking to carry out. You got your podcast. You got how you look, how you speak, how you feel. You got all those things. They're part of who you've taken on as your persona. That's what's worked for you. You could say that some of that is probably a bit inauthentic, and people are not ready to hear you be entirely new. And that's okay. Can you be merciful with them? And don't just run away just because their first thought was F you, or their first thought was, I don't know you, or I don't like you. You might be able to continue. In other words, you're not being authentic in order to get other people to like you. You're being authentic because that's your only choice. Whether it works or not, to get somebody to appreciate you. So you may find people who are offended by you being authentic. Well, here's what that happens to me, all I do is I incorporate that. It's like, okay, this authentic self is not interested in offending this person. So my next set of words are not going to be inauthentic, but it's going to take into consideration that I'm stepping on their toes. And then I can authentically take on the whole shebang at the same time, in fact, realizing that I'm having an impact on the other person here that isn't the one I would desire. So without lying, without becoming ingenuine, without becoming inauthentic, I still say my truth, but I say it in such a way to at least recognize that it might be leaving this person in a worse way.
Gotcha. I appreciate you for bringing that context in, especially with the discernment, and then you too being mindful and gracious with them getting to know your true self. So I thank you for that. And something that I love that you said was, you don't get better at being someone you are not. And I really appreciate that reminder, because someone might be sitting there right now trying to be a better version of someone that they truly aren't. And so here is your permission or your reminder to stop being the person that you think you are and be the person that you already are, that's within. And it just takes that time to really start peeling back the layers that you placed on top of that true voice that you have inside of you. Dr. Fred, for women who are tired, inflamed, and emotionally burnt out, where do you see the greatest opportunity for transformation right now?
Tired, it's a great question. Thank you. Tired, inflamed, and burnt out women. Compassion. Like, I have such deep compassion. This world needs women just as much, if not more than ever right now. Women need to stand up and they need to speak to the being tired, inflamed, and burnt out. They need to actually walk with that. And they still need to carry the day. After all, they still need to carry the day. That's what the tired and inflamed and burned out comes from. You still need to watch your kids. You still need to hang out with your man or your partner. You still need to walk through the world. You still need to bring nurturance and peace and love and all the things that women have an access to that maybe us men don't have immediate access to without you. So where's the trick? I think the trick is some of these 20 things that are in the thing called the Moss method that I just referenced, starting with gratitude, and then morning sky, and then meditation, and then nutrition, and then hydration, maybe celery juice, drinking lots of water, herbal teas, eating great foods, organic foods, like sitting still and silent for a little while, and yoga and tai chi and pampering of ourselves, and then being creative, getting out and taking walks, taking warm bubble baths at night, like actually stopping and getting that. When you're feeling overly burnt out, what you have done is that you have identified with all that freaking chaos that we were talking about before. There are thousands of reasons to be burnt out. To be what were the other two things you said? Like inflamed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I forgot the third one, but yeah. And there's so many tired, inflamed, and burnt out. I believe that's what you said.
Tired, inflamed, and emotionally burnt out. Yes, sir.
Right. So when you're looking at, there are so many reasons to heap on yourself. If you take that responsibility to shoulder the whole pain of your family or of your neighborhood or of your community, of your church, of your city, of your state, of your country. It's so easy to be burnt out. It's like there is enough fuel to be burnt that all of us can be burnt out and there'll still be fuel left. Like there's enough reasons. So I guess what I'm saying in the same way that I said about stress management is, believe it or not, when we come out of the default and we're able to sit still with I am not my emotions. I am not my feelings. I am not my sensations. I am not my thoughts. When I start getting it, I'm not even my circumstances. I'm not even the things happening to me. I'm none of that. There's an I in here that I get to access when I get mindful. And in that I am able, and you have seen women, and I have seen women. There's some remarkable women, and they don't even have to be famous at all. They can be right there in your household. They can be right next door, who are managing so many impossible things at the same time, and yet sit with peace and joy. It's possible. It is possible. It's not like you're incapable of doing that, but you do have to have a practice. You do have to be able to separate yourself out from the default of collapsing yourself, conflating yourself into the world around you, like actually becoming the stressful things that are happening. We listed a few of the high profile things that are happening in the world that are easy to be stressed out. And maybe some of them are actually happening in your own life. Maybe like there's some abuse going on, or there's some neglect going on, or maybe there's some actual pain going on. Or maybe there's stuff going on that has you very afraid or very concerned about things. And then there's all those other things that are happening that look like the world might be coming to an end. And it might be. I mean, it might be. So what? It might be. It's been that way forever. And the world might be coming to an end is not a recent thought. Humans have been dealing with that for thousands of years as well. And without minimizing the pain, totally getting the reality of the pain, one thing I'd like to do is suggest that there might be an exit from that pain, even though it's extremely real. So people think that if you tell them that there's an exit, that you're somehow diminishing the impact of its reality. I'm not. I'm not. It's very real. It's real as a heart attack. It's real as the sun coming up. It's real. It's totally real. But there might be an exit, and that is not to diminish the notion that there's pain there. See, people think that if I say there might be an exit, I'm telling them that they could leave. All they have to do is find the exit, no problem, and they'll reduce their pain. It's not quite like that. It's going to take something, but there might be an exit. And underline the most emphatic part about this, the most amplified to that is that there might be nothing wrong with you. It's not something wrong with you. You might be just like that log in a fire, and being overwhelmed is one of the choices you've made in order to deal with the outstanding amount of things that you have to deal with in order to be a woman in today's world.
I appreciate you breaking that down. Something that I really enjoyed most out of that breakdown, Dr. Fred, was I am not my circumstances.
That's right.
Because it's probably those circumstances that's triggering the inflammation, that's triggering the emotional burnt out, that's triggering the tiredness. And so I'm really grateful that you broke that down in a way for them to then turn that power and shift it into saying what they are not, in the event that they might be identifying with that. So y'all, I just want to share with you something that's happening that's really special. And it is a live event that's coming up. So if you've ever been stuck in cycles of pelvic pain, fatigue, bloating, and survival mode, it's not because you're weak. It's because your body's asking for a reset. In my upcoming event, 5 costly mistakes keeping you stuck in pelvic pain and fatigue, and how to break naturally free, I'll reveal the exact shifts that move you from hormonal chaos and inflammation into clarity, energy, and calm. So this is where the guessing ends and your healing begins. Head to the show notes, check out the training. And if you're enjoying and vibing the conversation with me and Dr. Fred, don't forget to subscribe if you're watching the video here on YouTube to the channel. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast distribution platform, follow the show, give it a rating, and thank you for tuning in. So Dr. Fred, you gave me 3 beautiful action steps in our prep talk before. You said, stop believing you're broken, watch what you consume, and have authentic conversations. Yep. Could you walk us through how each of these create a ripple effect for mental and emotional healing?
Sure. Let's go through them one by one. So go ahead and say the first one again.
Yes, sir. So the first one is stop believing you're broken.
Listen, this is so foundational. It's so foundational. You know, once you believe you're broken, you have really shut down so much of your own possibilities. You've decided that you can't. You've decided that you're stuck. You've decided that you're the same way, that you're a certain way and you will never improve. You have closed out so many doors and so many pathways that might sit in front of you. And once you believe you're broken, you become completely convinced that the only thing to do is fix you. And that you have to be fixed. And if you have to be fixed, you go leaning for this quickest and most wicked way to get fixed. This is where addictions often start. This is where going to mental health often starts. People come to mental health because people really think that what we learned in school makes us better at providing mental health than your friend or your neighbor. We didn't learn that stuff in school. I'm telling you, we didn't learn anything in school that made us better than your friend or your neighbor. We just didn't. They don't know how to teach that. No one knows how to teach that. You just became a great human being. And if you become a great human being, that's what's really here. So, you know, if you think you're broken, then you have really cut off a lot of the possibilities. Imagine if you've never been broken, even during the time that you were pretty sure you were. What if thinking that you were broken is only a sign that you're not, is what I'm trying to say. Because we all think we're broken. There's a default out there to thinking that, you know, I'm so different than everybody else. We have this willingness to compare our insides with everybody's outsides and call that an even trade, but that's not really how it goes. You know, I'm not broken is one way to start, even though I feel completely discombobulated or completely like disintegrated. That's not a matter of I love how you've said it a couple times today. Your body's not broken. It's just talking to you. It's just letting you know that there's something to take care of. And that's what this is. It's not a break. It's not broken. You're just being a human in a world where being a human is extraordinarily difficult. And it's been difficult for the very beginning of time. And it's just as difficult now, maybe slightly more, maybe slightly less. There are times that it were worse than where we are now, for sure. And, you know, you just want to look at what if it were never broken? Then you wouldn't have to go in and take on these like ridiculous treatments that are just going to make you worse anyways.
Agree. And it's something that I like that you said about that too, Dr. Fred, is that what it made me think about was we're not also used to listening to our bodies. we're used to just pushing through, doing whatever it is that we need to do on the outside, looking in what we want to get accomplished, what we want to, the next task that we need to do, how we want to show up for ourselves or maybe other people. But we're not even used to knowing how to truly listen to our bodies and be in tune in our bodies to know that something is off. And for me, that debilitating pelvic pain that made me weak to the point where I was merging into another lane and an 18-wheeler was coming, that life-threatening pain for me was enough to say, okay, I need to figure out what's going on inside of my body. Like, I don't know what's happening. And being able to then find some of those root causes, Dr. Fred, knowing that stage 4 endometriosis means deep infiltration of inflammation, the hormonal chaos that comes with PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, and fibroids, and adenomyosis, that's a lot of inflammation. Inflammation is triggered by so many different lifestyle disruptors that you're not even paying attention to, i.e. the stress, i.e. the relationships that you have where you can't be your true self, and your true self isn't accepting and loving and feel comfortable and safe in these relationships or that you're having, you know what I'm saying? It was just like being able to now see it all come to fruition, Dr. Fred. It was that if I didn't listen to my body, when my body finally said, if you don't listen, more things could potentially happen, it'll really make you slow down and think about what's really causing these things. And it was all rooted in lifestyles. Like, everything is not necessarily genetics, because things that can be genetically an issue also can be reversed based on lifestyles at times. And so
sure.
I'm really glad that you kind of hit that part with breaking down the part about stop believing that you're broken. But the big gem that I got out of that, Dr. Fred, was that when you claim that you are broken, you cut off all possibilities. And what's possible is so much that is possible. Like, the Empire Plates, Empire Lives podcast is now over 100 episodes of so many people outside of just myself with solo episodes, but guests coming and pouring in and letting people know what's possible. And it's not about what's possible if you buy all these things or you go see this specialist. It's telling you what's possible if you make a different choice or a different decision. And so I'm really grateful that you talked about the fact that if you claim that you are broken and you receive that identity, that you are breaking off the possibilities of what is possible for you, that just might be in the next decision in the way that you show up for yourself, because you deserve it. So I really appreciate that, Dr. Fred. The next one was watch what you consume.
Look, and when talking about consumption, so thank you, that breakdown, that was fabulous, is when talking about consumption, I'm not just talking about what you put into your mouth. So in consumption, there's multiple ways to consume. You consume what you see, you consume what you hear, you consume who you're with, you consume what you smell, you consume what you taste, and you consume what you touch. All those things are consumption. They're different forms of consumption. So when you put those things into your body, they become you. When you put a Cheeto into your body, you're now part Cheeto. You know, that's just true. And when you, where else did the Cheeto go? Cheeto's part of you at that moment. And so when you do that, that's okay. Or when you see something, or when you surround yourself with a group that's got a certain aura, a certain a speech pattern, or a certain thought process, then you become that. So if you want to be excellent, if you want to have an extraordinary life, if you want to be outside the range of just ordinary, surround yourself with excellence. Do what you can. And that also means be careful what you eat, be careful what you drink. There's things out there, they're tempting. I like Cheetos. I mean, they're not my favorite, but if we talk about Cheetos, I like potato chips, for instance. We have some eco hipster potato chips now that are so damn good. I can't wait to break open a bag later tonight. But I'm lucky. I have a wife that takes care of us and makes sure that we get the very, very best. So they're like $14 a bag potato chips that are just too yummy. And they're excellent enough that they're truly health foods. It's just potato and beef tallow. That's it. And a little bit of salt. It's like so good. Now, when we surround ourselves when we actually consume that which is excellent, we then become part excellent. So when we take in through our eyes, through our ears, through our touch, through our experience, through our taste, through our smell, through our feel, this is when we start being able to become that which is who we are. And if we take in lousy things in all of those areas, and we know what lousy is, we do. We are good police. We know when we have when we take in something that's not consistent with our higher self, then we get a life that looks like that. It's not a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise. It's not rocket science. It's simple. So we be very careful about what we put in our mouth. And, one of the things that is important, and I often forget, and you saw me drinking today, is drinking a lot of water. Water is the lifeblood of so much of all living things that count, at least on here on Earth, are very dependent on water. And so keeping that flow going of what life has to offer is really important. So I think drinking really good, clean water is an excellent idea as well. But in the world of consumption, consume things that are in the realm of excellence if you want to have an excellent life.
I love it. Thank you. Surround yourself with excellence. Consume excellence.
Right.
And the last one was have authentic conversations.
Look, we've already had a great conversation here. This is an example of an authentic conversation. I don't get to have conversations like this every single day, even with my people. So I really appreciate who you are. And our capacity to do this for other folks is really, really good. So authentic conversations are worth getting addicted to. That's what we already talked about. Like when we're authentic, when we're genuine, when we're speaking to our core, our emotion, our emotional central self, when we're being honest, when we're in integrity, there's a magic that happens at that moment. And the magic doesn't just happen for you, but it does happen for you, but not. It actually is happening for the other person too, because they're realizing, they're like, whoa, this woman's authentic. I guess I have an invitation here to be as authentic as I can be in her presence. It's not that important to actually agree with her. It's important to match her level of authenticity. Authenticity will trump agreement every single time. Have you ever noticed that you could talk to somebody who's diametrically opposed to you on a particular topic? There's some topics out there that are pretty divisive these days. And so, you got this topic or that topic. Like are you there or are you there? Are you there or are you there? Are you there or are you there? And that person, you can have somebody who actually disagrees with you, like diametric opposition to you. And yet you're able to listen to them and even get their point as long as they're being authentic when they're delivering it. Rather than somebody who's just agreeing with you and not being authentic. That person is not really easy to lock up with, but you can really get going. Authenticity is so critical. And when we can start tapping into the idea that we have naturally become more inauthentic over the years, we're not interested necessarily in speaking our truest self. We would rather protect ourselves and, as you call it, just survival mode. And when we step into our own power and be authentic, we get a life that really works. And that's where the magic really happens.
We get a life that really works.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I like that. We get a life that really works. And something that I got out of that was integrity creates the magic, not just for you, but also for others. Mm-hmm. Dr. Fred, I kind of want to ask you this last question, and then we'll get into our vitality sparks before our signature ending questions. And it's, what's the difference between coping and healing? And how do we really know that we've crossed into real transformation?
Well, I don't think you have to know. You don't have to know anything. The difference between coping is that coping is more or less reacting. Coping, just like it's the way it is. It implies something like the hopelessness or the helplessness of just dealing with things as they are. And in the world of the serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Coping is like not that. Coping is like, I don't know. I guess we'll just deal with it as it is. Whereas healing is different than that. Healing is incorporating it. It's embodying it. It's getting that that's what's so, and owning it, choosing to own the way things are. Rather than just by default accepting the way things are, there's a choice inside of healing that is, I get it. I get it that there's misery over there. I get it that there's barbarism over there. I get it that it's, unacceptable pain and suffering over there. And I live with it. like I own it as part of a life component, a quality of what it means to be alive in the present day. So when I can really get that going on, that's more in the healing mode. And I know that when I'm there, whereas coping is sort of like, I don't know, I'm coping, like it's almost like defensive, submissive. Sometimes it's appropriate. Sometimes it's appropriate. I'm not saying it's something wrong with coping. I'm just saying there's a lot more power in healing than there is in coping.
Sir, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so we're getting into the Vitality Sparks round. So quick responses of clarity, courage, and conscious living. So the first question is a truth you wish more people knew about mental health.
It's made up. It's a conversation that's up. It's 100% made up. It's not what's true in St. Louis isn't true in Singapore, and therefore it's made up. There's no definition that holds a worldwide.
All right. A daily practice that helps you stay grounded in your own authenticity.
The daily practice I'd have to say is meditation. I'm really a fan of that. The power of that is extraordinary. But also loving my wife is very important, and somehow coming to grips with that, at least for a few minutes a day. And I think that let's start with that. I think like writing and reading is really important too. Learning.
I like it. A belief that once limited you and what replaced it.
I think a belief that limited me is that I was not powerful. Is that I was stuck in a system. I was a fly in the spider web, and there was no chance of getting out. Even as a doctor, this was an issue. It's like maybe I'm sort of helping people, but I don't think I am. And there's some sort of helplessness and hopelessness. And what really got me out of it, I'd say, was this, especially around 2016 and 17, and maybe that was upon meeting Alexandra, a commitment to many of the practices we're talking about here, a commitment to, what, I got one life to live. I'm going to die someday soon, probably, maybe not soon, like next week, maybe, even if it's 40 years from now, it's soon. And I got one chance at this. So let's go for it for real.
One book or teacher that cracked something wide open for you.
I got to go with the Torah there. The Torah is such a cool book. I can't get enough of it usually. And I don't listen to or watch enough of it or read enough of it. But I love that book. And I sometimes just get the whole notion that the world really got created. This is a belief system that I can actually hear to. And when I'm listening, when I'm in it, I just rise over the top of all the problems that are going on here. And I just start realizing, even if I don't even have to choose a chapter, all I have to do is like read for a few sentences. And right then I'm just like into some cosmic truth of peace that's available. And somehow it all makes sense in that other realm.
Okay. Finish this sentence. Healing begins when you finally
move the things out of the way that are in the way of you being your true self.
All right. So Dr. Fred, last two questions. Give some insights for the girl dads, the father figures, the role models, the spouses, the partners, the brothers of women, girls who are dealing with heavy periods, pelvic pain, hormonal chaos and imbalances that may be leading to endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, and fibroids. How could they better be a part of the healing journey and support system for these?
Well, I think where I'm going to go with this. It's just a matter of really just listening and being there. They're not asking you to cure them. They're not asking you to be anything but listen. And they want to be heard. You don't have to jump over and feel their pain with them. You don't have to do that. But on the other hand, really listening and understanding that there's someone there, just like kids, just like you, just like everyone, who just wants to be heard for the struggle that they're going through and the life that they're having. And whatever condition they have, from PCOS to endometriosis or anything like that, you're not going to be able to understand it from your own physical self, more than likely, unless you're in the support group with them or something. And there's an opportunity to get that really we're all here. And what people want more than anything when they're in pain or when they're not in pain is to be heard and seen for who they are and who they're not. And that's what's here. That's the best you can do with anybody. I don't have a better healing
for who they are and who they are not. I appreciate that, Dr. Fred. Last question. If you could have a meal with any historical figure, who would they be and what would you all eat?
So a few different names come to mind here. I've answered this question a couple times. There's Moses. Moses is pretty cool. Today's Rosh Hashanah. So I think that, Moses would be a good choice here. And, we would just have a feast. We'd have an Israeli feast and probably drink a little bit of wine and some real bread. And maybe we'd try some true matzah. And the conversation would just be, he's such a wise leader who was so unprepared for the job that he took on, and then just what a beast of a human. So I think Moses would probably be the guy.
Okay. All right. Well, let everybody know where they can find you, where they can grab the books and connect with you, Dr. Fred.
Yeah. So I have a website that's pretty fun. That is kind of the hub of the wheel of what I do. It's called drfred360.com. drfred360.com. And you can find everything I'm doing. There's some freebies there. There's a discovery call opportunity there. All my books are there. All my presentations are there. My podcast. It's all loaded up in there. It's a really cool site. And then I have this other site and this other project that I'm up to recently that I'm very super excited about. And that's the Undoctor Reset. And the undoctorreset.com is where I really want to send people, because if you want to know what we're really up to, this is what we're doing. We're bringing heart and soul to the whole idea of mental health. And we're having it be that like-minded individuals who are either tired of not being treated at the level they deserve or are interested in learning how to treat people at the level that they deserve, including themselves and their loved ones. The Undoctor Reset is the place to go for that. And undoctorreset.com is a very, very cool spot. There's lots of levels that you can enter in on, from extremely low, even up to the level of free, all the way to, retreats that we're having. So that's a super exciting place to meet me as well. And it's the culmination of all my work to date. Everything that I've ever been doing is encompassed in Undoctor Reset.
Dr. Fred, thank you for just coming through, sharing your experiences, your insights, and just having a great, empowering conversation. Thank you for being an amazing guest. Y'all, this has been another episode of the Empowered Place, Empowered Lives podcast. And I want you to know that you're not broken. You're buried. This episode is about reclaiming the pen, rewriting your story, and using your true voice to heal. Check the show notes for good vibes and value to help you on your healing journey. Thanks for vibing with me, y'all.